London is not a beautiful city. Under the soot that covers its buildings is a teeming mass of 4 million souls trying to survive, mostly off of each other. You see it in the paper every day. Thankfully, we have the London Times to keep us informed of all these troubling activities with an unbiased eye and razor-sharp accuracy. We find this publication to be of invaluable assistance in our investigations, and I'm sure you will as well. Among the forces of evil which run rampant in this city, there are also, thankfully, two groups of individuals who will aid us in our cause. As we do, they attempt to right wrongs and restore harmony and civility to the streets of London. The first of these groups is a ragtag association of young ruffians. I call them the Baker Street Irregulars. Don't let them fool you. They may be scruffy and ill-bred, but they are on the right side of the law. They can go everywhere, see everything, and overhear everyone. They are my eyes and ears in the streets of London, unquestionably a tremendous asset in our work. They will help us in our investigations if they can. The other group is a far more civilized collection of gentlemen and institutions. I call them the Baker Street Regulars. They, too, will be extremely useful in our work. At the start of any investigation, do keep in mind that it is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Unwittingly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts. The people and places to whom I will now introduce you will help us to collect the facts. May we use them wisely. Come, the game's afoot. Mr. Henry Ellis is the foreign news editor for the London Times. He is a great reservoir of information of what's happening on the continent. He also has an interest in crime news. Ellis is always happy to help when he can, but you must be careful of what you tell him, or you might find what you've confided to him in the next day's Times. This is a records office housing documents pertaining to births, marriages, deaths, and last wills and testaments. Quentin Hogg is a crime reporter for the Police Gazette. He is an ex-police inspector who found the environment of Scotland Yard less than stimulating. He has a strong deductive mind and is a very good resource. Porky is not a pillar of society, I dare say, but he is a man who has learned from his mistakes and is trying to start a new life. Although he is no longer in prison, he is still behind bars, or shall I say, a bar.
Jolly good one, Holmes.
Yes, Watson. Well, the bar in question is the Raven and Rat Inn. Porky is the proprietor. He has been of great help to us in the past, and I expect he will continue to be in the future. Ah, Scotland Yard. If the Yard knew how to examine evidence with any skill, there would be no need for our services. Inspector Lestrade is the pick of a bad lot. But it is... Edward Hall is a young barrister whom you will find on most days at the Old Bailey. He's a cut above the other unimaginative members of his profession.
Holmes, don't you think you should explain to them the difference between a barrister and a solicitor?
Yes. Sir Jasper is the chief medical examiner for St. Bartholomew's Hospital. He is London's greatest forensic... This gentleman is the head chemist at Scotland Yard Criminology Laboratory. If I can't find something in my own files, I go and examine the overflowing shelves of the great London Library. Now, here is a person who usually gets in the last word. Langdale Pike is a human reference work on social scandal. Head clerk Disraeli O'Brien is your contact in the Office of Records. The Office of Records contains legal records, both criminal and civil, as well as state papers.
I think you'll find these tools to be positively invaluable as you endeavor to help Holmes solve these cases.
What rubbish! What balderdash!
You must have read something terribly disturbing, Watson, for you to be so overwrought this early in the morning.
Indeed, Holmes. It's irresponsible of the Times to play upon people's superstitions.
Ah, you must be referring to the affair of the mummy's curse.
Has the entire city in an uproar. 3 men dead, and they expect us to believe that a 4,000-year-old mummy was the murderer. I'm surprised you haven't taken some interest in this case, Holmes.
To the contrary, my dear Watson. I have made some inquiries, because I dare say I do believe this murderer is a much younger chap.
Here it is, Holmes. Egyptian mummies are embalmed bodies preserved to facilitate their resurrection. Many mummies have been found, and they are almost always the bodies of pharaohs. The pharaohs believed that one day their bodies would be brought back to life. See History of Egyptian Mummies by Pettigrew, London, 1834.
Very good, Watson.
Such a tragedy. Fine men all, and such outstanding scholars. I still can't quite get over the shock of it.
We understand.
Professor, we're looking for background information on these three men so that we can understand how their murders might tie together.
Well, let me begin with Dr. Turnbull. Ebenezer Turnbull was responsible for organizing the Carteret expedition. Quite a remarkable man, really. This was the first time he teamed up with James Windibank. Professor Windibank was one of our most popular lecturers. In fact, several of his former students were also eager to accompany him. I recall him saying that he was having difficulty choosing. Weatherby turned out to be the lucky one. Though it seems far from it now, doesn't it? I suppose Smith and Travis turned out to be the lucky ones after all.
Smith and Travis?
Peter Smith accepted the invitation to join another expedition. As for Philip Travis, he was quite keen on accompanying Professor Windibank. In fact, he became exceedingly upset when Andrew Weatherby, a postgraduate student in the department, was chosen instead. Took it rather personally, I should say.
Windibank's body was found in the mummy's case.
Inside it?
Precisely. One of the guards, Henry Witherspoon, discovered it when making his rounds. He noticed that the lid was askew and a hand was sticking out of it. By the look on his face when he came to summons me, he must have thought that the mummy was attempting to leave its resting place. Some of the guards have been a bit on edge, you know, since the stories about Dr. Turnbull's death.
What happened when you arrived at the scene?
Witherspoon assisted me in removing the lid, and there was the body of James Windibank. Around his neck was a bandage of linen.
And the mummy was missing?
No, it was in there too. Underneath poor Windibank, completely undisturbed, not a length of its sheeting unraveled.
Who had access to the exhibit room?
Well, the room was officially closed yesterday while we set up the exhibit. But the museum was open, and we took no extraordinary precautions to keep people out.
Can you think of anyone who might have wanted to kill Windibank?
None at all. I actually didn't know him very well. He did work for the museum, you see. He was with the London University. The university and the museum were joint sponsors of the Ketterbeck expedition.
Mr. Johnson, can you think of anything whatsoever that might shed some light on this affair?
No. I'm very sorry. I can't think of a thing. I only hope that all this publicity doesn't keep people away from the exhibit.
So you've been reading my articles in the Times. I'm honored. What do you think of them?
Quite interesting. You've clearly been following the murders quite closely. Who do you suspect?
I believe it is the work of the ancient Egyptian god Pumatef and his goddess Neith.
Be serious.
I couldn't be more serious. You see, Mr. Holmes, although I am a journalist, I was actually trained as an Egyptologist. I know all about these mysteries. That's why my articles carry the force of truth.
And what is the truth, Mr. Travis?
The truth is that the Egyptians discovered the secret of life. What we call science is mere child's play compared to the knowledge they had. Look at this. Do you know what this is?
It appears to be a mummified animal of some sort, a monkey, perhaps?
Precisely.
Quite a conversation piece.
I've been using it in some very important experiments which, if successful, will unlock the secret to bringing back the souls of the dead. I've been working on it, Mr. Holmes, using these tanner leaves. Watch. Uma Lotus. Licantina. Burura.
It appears that the soul of this particular monkey has no intention of making a reappearance.
It's only a matter of time. I know it is. After all, these secrets have been buried for thousands of years. These things don't happen overnight. But it will happen someday. This is my mission.
I believe I'll leave you to your work, Mr. Travis.
Don't go yet. Let me show you more.
Thank you. Some other time, perhaps.
James was so thrilled when Dr. Turnbull invited him to join the expedition. He felt he had spent his entire life reading books about archaeology, and now was finally getting an opportunity to go out into the field.
Tell me, Mrs. Winterberg, when your husband returned, did he discuss the deaths of his colleagues?
Of course. James was extremely upset. I know he did not believe a curse to be responsible. My husband was a man of science.
Dr. Turnbull, he was a strange one, he was. Hardly ever at home, always traipsing about the Lord knows where.
May I take a look at his things?
Oh, suit yourself. All he had is a big pile of books about Egyptian mummies and a few maps. He was a son of an earl, he was. Though you hardly tell from looking at him, poor fellow. Do you really think this mummy thing's what's done him in? Creepy, I says. Sorry I can't help you, Ducky, but Mr. Smith has been out of the country since the middle of March. He's a good-looking bloke, except for the dirt under his fingernails.
It's quite amusing, all this hoopla over a mummy's curse, I must say. Not so amusing, of course, the murder of 3 Englishmen.
Have any of your reporters uncovered anything new?
Actually, I've been in Paris the past several weeks. Just returned to London on Tuesday. I've had no involvement with the writing of any of these articles. I believe they are all the work of Philip Travis. He's one of our young reporters. For a short time, he was the Egyptian correspondent.
Was he sacked?
No. He returned to London just a few days ago. I gather he was reassigned to cover the case from here because he had some familiarity with a murder in Egypt.
Do you know Travis?
No, never actually met the chap, although I hear he's a bit of an odd duck.
Thanks for your help, Henry.
Anytime. Let me know when you catch the mummy. That's one scoop I'd like to get.